doing something big. Well, it's not something big. I feel like every time it's like real talk, you know, like, okay, we're talking real. And today's real talk is, what do you do when people don't like what you are doing? Because it will happen. I just need to tell my team that I'm live, because sometimes I'm live and they don't know. So here I go. I'm live, I think. So we are talking about what to do when people don't like what you're doing. And that can be a real problem for many reasons, but it can be a huge problem, particularly when in a pandemic we're not seeing people face to face. It can feel really disconnected. And so whether we're talking about looking back and thinking what went wrong there, whether we're bringing in changes and we're thinking people are not working, or just looking at the future and thinking how can I create a healthy pattern of dealing with this kind of stuff, that's what we're going to be talking about today. You will in ministry face people who won't like what you do. And I think we can all put out a whoop whoop. There are very few of us who have met with universal praise and appreciation in all of our choices. And so we're going to talk about that today, because I don't think we talk about it enough. So I've been there, you've been there. This would be a really good one to make sure that we are feeding back to each other and talking about it and affirming each other in this. So I'm Rachel Turner. I'll be doing this. Anna Hawken, who has also been a very experienced children's pastor and now coordinates the national work, is on here. She'll be typing away, and everyone will be a community. So I'm just going to pop around here to make sure it is functioning, because I always turn it around. Yes, fine. Oh, and I have to turn off my sound so that it doesn't mean that all my friends who text me will do that. Great. So let's get started. Can I just say, it makes me sad I don't get to see you. It makes me wonder whether we should do these on Zoom rather than Facebook Live. But then, man, Zoom is exhausting. So I don't know. Let me know if you have a preference. We'll keep doing it on my Facebook Live, because I want you to be able to feel like you can just eat, talk to your kids, and check your phone while you do it, and no one feels sad. But if you think actually having a conversation would be better, we can look at that as well. I'm just pondering that out loud. But for now, let's jump into what if people don't like what you're doing. If you are like me, you may be more mature than me, a better person than me, but my instinct is to always either hide. As soon as I get a whiff that people don't like what I'm doing, I either want to curl in a ball and hide and avoid those people, like the plague, or I want to come out fighting, like, all right, fine, you don't like the fact that children know God, well then I'm going to take you down and teach you about that, because I will fight for the children. And so I either feel ridiculously aggressive or horrifically hiding. I'd be interested what you think. Feel free to share what level of the spectrum, or if you're like, no, I'm perfectly and healthily balanced in the middle, feel free to say that too, and we shall applaud you. But my instinct initially is those two things. And for me, in my journey of dealing with people not liking what I do, which is common, is that I had to go on a journey of a heart change, because I realized that both of those approaches, both my desire to hide and my desire to fight, were primarily based on self-protection. They were based on me and my insecurities and my wanting to protect what I've created and the kids that I have. It came from a very protectionistic point of view, which meant that I saw anybody who didn't like what I did as a threat, as an opposition, as an, if not an enemy, someone who was trying to tear me down, and I needed to protect myself against that. And when I began to go on a journey of not seeing that, I don't now see it as someone who's sitting in judgment, who's judgmental, who's trying to hurt me or my ministry. When I went on to Heart Change, of seeing people who don't like what I do or are struggling with some of my choices in leadership as people who are on a journey, who are struggling and need my help, well, then I have a whole different approach to them. If there are people who are just communicating it badly, who are genuinely going, I'm struggling here, and it's coming out as anger or opposition or judgment, then I'm just responding to the symptom of the problem, and I'm not responding to the heart of the problem, which is that there are people who God loves who are struggling, and it's my job to help them on their journey as much as it is for me to help kids and young people and parents on their journey. And so a heart change of that can be really helpful to get into our hearts a pattern of thinking, oh gosh, someone's struggling with what I'm doing. How can I help them? Rather than someone's struggling with what I'm doing, I must now either never talk to them again or crush them solidly. So we're going to look at the reasons behind why people can struggle, because this was part of my journey of discovering it, was people are struggling, and often what they tell me they're struggling with, often what they tell me they don't like, isn't actually the heart of what is going on in them. It's just the thing that they can articulate. So it's sort of like if you're in a friendship and your friend hasn't texted you back for ages, and then you're really annoyed that she hasn't texted you back for ages. So then when you eventually have a conflict about it, you're like, you never text me back. The heart of the issue isn't you never text me back. The heart of the issue is I feel like I'm not important to you. I feel like we're drifting apart. I feel like you're finding somebody else and I'm being replaced. There's lots of deeper stuff beyond the actual behavior. And for working with parents and older generations and anybody within a congregation who is struggling with what you're doing, often it is not about the behavior, it's about something else. And so I just want to outline what the something else could be so that we can learn to see it differently. And then I'm going to take you through, yes, I printed out pictures, a sort of process of proactively dealing with people who are struggling with us. And as usual, type in questions, type in comments, type in situations you're in, and we will wade through it together. And we'll do that at the end. But for now, please start feeding in now, because we will give you all the time you need. But first, let's look at what it could be, and then we'll look at a process for how do we proactively deal with this. And then we'll start looking at our circumstances, and maybe together we can figure out ways forward. So the first thing that it could be, sort of reason for opposition is, so what could it be? The first thing it could be is just a pure old misunderstanding. The amount of times that I have had really angry people angry at choices I never made are huge. And so I've had people coming in when I began to add a lot more spiritual stuff to our toddler group. People coming in going, how dare you turn your back on the church, on the community? This is an outreach experience for people. We have people of Muslim faith coming in. We have Buddhists coming in. And you, by making this a Christian club for Christian parents, are totally turning your back on what the church is for. Now, none of that was what I actually did. But in their perception, they just misunderstood what was going on. And so sometimes, rather than arguing about what it actually was going to look like and do that, I began to just affirm and see what is coming at me is a misunderstanding. And we'll talk about how I can deal with that when we look at the steps. But that was just a pure misunderstanding. It wasn't them disliking my plans. It was them misunderstanding what's going on behind my plans and what is going to be looking at the future. So some of the first things I begin to ask is, what is this person misunderstanding about what's going on? Another thing is that they just may be terrible at change. We've talked multiple times about how people are bad at change. People like me eat change up for breakfast. I love change, but not everybody loves change. And so sometimes change is really difficult. We're in this pandemic situation, which is enormous amounts of change. People are exhausted from the change. I even getting slightly tired of change. And I love change. And so sometimes people just don't cope well with change. And so we bring in a change. We bring in something new, even if it's super small, like swapping the puppet you use, or deciding that you're going to be doing a Zoom at 4:30 rather than 5. Sometimes it can be minor changes, but people sometimes don't deal well with change. And so it can feel too sudden. It can feel like they didn't have enough heads up. It just could be that we didn't do a good job of taking people on a change process and giving them time to walk a change process that works well for them. So it could be that they're struggling with change. And so they're busy saying, I hate your all age stuff. And actually, what's going on inside of them is, this is all really sudden, and I thought I was going to have this Sunday to worship God, and now I can't because there's kids there and I don't know what to do. And so sometimes it's just a change response rather than actually anything else. Sometimes it is me being bad at it. Bad at it. I'm bad at lots of things. I am new at lots of things. I am unskilled at lots of things. I am still learning lots of things. And there will be times where I will make mistakes and that I will deliver things not well. And that their complaints are actually legitimate and actually they're complaining. Now, that was my best. Sometimes it was totally my best and it's just essentially not good enough. And I can get that. Some of the things that I was really bad at was admin, just coordinating. You know, I was at a large church. It was just me trying to coordinate, 80 plus volunteers, 180 children, the families, the parents, the family dynamics. I was overwhelmed and not good at it and got a lot of criticism for it. And that was legit. And what I did was I hid from most of everybody because I was like, why are they attacking me? And in the end, I had to really proactively go through that because, sometimes, people accurately spot our weaknesses. Surprise, we're not good at everything. That's okay. That can be fixed too. Not by just being better, but, we'll talk about it. Sometimes you have a kid falling through the cracks or a family falling through the cracks. And I found this really interesting. In thinking about the cracks, because I think sometimes what I would get is families struggling with what I was doing or not attending the course or, doing something and you're just like, this family just seems constantly to pick away at stuff or not like what's going on or be demanding stuff that I can't deliver. And it took me a while to realize that the reason why they were constantly asking for stuff that was different than what I'm doing or they'd ask for something, I'd deliver it, and it wasn't the way they wanted it, so then they wouldn't come, but I was putting it on for them, and it took me a while to figure out that it was that they felt that their kid was falling through the cracks, not just of my ministry, but of their competency, of their ability to help their kid. And so what I was getting was a desperate parent who felt that their kid was slipping, and they didn't know what to do. And once I could crack that, once I could understand that all of this was because their kid was falling through the cracks and they didn't know what to do, so they were just suggesting everything, then I could proactively go on this journey with them to problem solve the real thing, which was that they felt their kid was falling through the cracks. And so it could be that. You could be getting that. And sometimes it is grandparents who are struggling because they felt like their kid did fall through the cracks, or sometimes you just get that sort of thing. Or sometimes I've had problems sometimes with elderly people who felt like their partners were falling through the cracks. Their partners may be struggling with mental health, with dementia, and they felt like by adding an old age to this or by changing this or bringing this in, it would make their partner struggle, and they got family protected. So it's anybody falling through the cracks. Sometimes it's that we're messing with their needs. So sometimes people need to worship in a certain way because they don't know any other way, or sometimes they are desperate for that midweek connection and we just took it away or we just changed it. And we never really know what the fiddly bit of those needs are. So sometimes what you're getting is this need response that's coming out in judgment, but actually what's underneath it is, if you change the way midweek morning group works, I will not be able to talk about my marriage and I'm going to crumble. And so sometimes you're just getting this need thing that's happening. I won't be able to make it on Thursday, so therefore I'll feel isolated, that you're running into. Sometimes you are running against a philosophical, I'm going to call it philo, or theo disagreement. Sometimes people are going to disagree with you, and that's just it. I believe that kids can connect with God. Some people don't. Sometimes you're like, okay, we theologically disagree, but then you know what the disagreement is, rather than them saying that all age should have shorter talks, longer talks, or that your kids group should start at the beginning of the service. And once you know what you're dealing with, then you can engage with the conversation. So sometimes there will be philosophical or theological disagreements. I had one conflict that I know of, that the people really truly felt that children's ministry was the best spiritual place for children on a Sunday morning. but their parents had decided that this kid at 11, they wanted to bring into the main service because that's what this kid needed, a fuller sermon, some time and peace to be with God. And there was a massive conflict about whether or not children should be allowed to do that, because there was a philosophical and theological disagreement that we could then engage with. And then sometimes it's just communication. Sometimes we don't communicate the why, just the what. So once I was bringing back, our teenagers met at a different location, and I wanted to bring them back in. And so we were saying the teens are coming back in, how exciting, they'll be here at the beginning of service so that they can connect and blah, blah, blah. And people were like, ooh, but the teenagers need their own space. And we went on this big back and forth. And I realized that I never communicated the why, which is that the teenagers themselves were reporting that they felt that they didn't belong to our church, that they attended a separate church, and that the church didn't care about them, love them, or need them. And that was why I was bringing them back. And once I communicated that, everything dropped. And they were like, yes, of course. But I wasn't communicating well. So sometimes it's a communication issue. And so when you see people coming up and saying, I don't like what you're doing, or this isn't working, or I think that's a bad choice, we should be running this, what we see is opposition and judgment. And I think what I'd like us to learn to see is this. Is to really think through misunderstanding, changing, me being bad at it, kid falling through the cracks, needs. There's so much. And once we know that there's so much, then once we get someone struggling, then the question is, how can I wade into this? How can I proactively help us walk this? Rather than, man, 40% of this church hates this choice, and now I feel like a bad leader. Oh, it's interesting. Anna was saying that, Joe is saying, at the moment I take opposition over seemingly no feedback or engagement. Okay, let's take that true. So if you're reaching opposition or disengagement, I would say that's a similar way of looking at it, because no feedback or engagement, I think, is just in this pandemic issue, what we're doing is that is their response. That is their way of feeding back that it's not working for them. So it could be that they misunderstand what all ages are for and how to engage. It could be that the change is too much and they just can't figure out how to wrestle their family to it. It could be that they're disengaged because what I'm delivering on a Thursday afternoon just isn't working for their kid. So it may not be that we're not good at it. It could be that their kid's brain just doesn't work that way. In our family, our children's leaders are doing amazing midweek stuff, excellent midweek stuff. They rewrote portions of Ephesians and send it in a letter to the kids as if Paul's writing to them, and then they meet and discuss it once a week. Amazing. Does that work for my family? Nope. And so we aren't engaged with it. Not because they're doing it badly, but because that just doesn't work for the particular way the people in my house engage with online stuff. And so that doesn't mean I'm opposed to it, but to them it may look like I'm opposed to it because I'm not there. And so sometimes they dealt with it really well, Sometimes it's that the kid is falling through the cracks and that they're like, oh, this doesn't work for my kid, so I'm disengaged. Sometimes it's that they're experiencing needs. They need more relational stuff and they're not getting it, and so they're just pulling away. Sometimes it could be that they're like, oh, I just agree with this whole thing, we should be meeting live. Sometimes it's that we're just not communicating in a way that they can hear. And so I would suggest that we don't just wait for aggression. I think people not liking what we're doing isn't necessarily always connected to aggression. It's connected to them finding their place within it and them working for them. And that is the same thing, whether they're overly angry about it or whether they're apathetic and disconnected from it. We're still looking at these questions. Does that make sense? Okay, Anna, tell me if I'm missing something and if it makes sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at it, but from what I hear, we're looking at people not necessarily being angry but also aggressive. So we're going to as we look through these things, I'll make sure I'm applying it to what if people are coming at you with opposition, or what if people are just missing and you're talking to basic caverns of nothingness. Okay, so we'll continue on that journey with that. So these are your whats. So how do we deal with that? Okay, these are our stages. So when we're planning stuff, and I think this is a good thing, we've been in this lockdown for about 6 months now. So some of us have tried. I would love to know, as you type in now, could you type in how many different phases of things that you have tried? Like, we tried this and that didn't work, or we did this and that didn't work, or we thought we'd do this and then that didn't get picked up. Just so that everyone else can hear that you have tried 2 or 3 things, or you tried one thing and now you're exhausted from it. But just be heard right now, because I think it's really important that we see that we are 6 months in, and some of us are going back, some of us are not going back, and some of us feel like there's an echo chamber. We just speak out and there's no one coming at us, and sometimes the only people we hear are the people who don't like it. And so one of the things that we could do is to look ahead, not necessarily look back. And so sometimes our experience can be really helpful, but I would suggest that over the past 6 months, people have been changing so much, and there's circumstances that have been changing so much, that you may have learned some things through your next 6 months, but I wouldn't necessarily say that means that's how it's going to be going forward. Because what was great in month 2 can now be exhausting in month 6. Or what nobody understood in week 8, now everyone understands and really likes in week, whatever, we're in 30. And so sometimes I suggest you look back at your journey, yes, but I suggest you look ahead to what you know is coming in the next season. Some of us are going back, some of us are knowing we're not going to be back till January. We have a bit more security in that. So as we look ahead, some of the questions to begin asking is, what am I seeing? What am I seeing now? What do I think I'm seeing in the future? Are there any misunderstandings about what church looks like now? Are there any changes that are happening that people are just disengaging from or not taking a part of? Do you make a change and you've lost people and they haven't made that change? That doesn't necessarily mean that they don't like it. It may mean that we just haven't brought them along, and so we need to go back and make more micro changes. Is it that what we're delivering isn't necessarily run the right way? Is it that their kids are falling through the cracks, and so therefore they're disconnecting because their kids are disconnecting? Is it because there's needs? Is it because there's a philosophical or theological thing? Is it about communication? And so look ahead to sort of where we are, what's coming up, and so we can proactively feel like we can talk about this, and to think about that. And if you're feeling like you're getting no feedback, parents are just not talking to you, talk to your keenies, because everyone has 2 or 3 keenies, and know what is working for them. But I would really suggest you hunt down the ones that you haven't talked to in 6 months, and don't ask, is this program working for you? Is this, what's going on? And trying to get assessment or feedback on what you are doing. I suggest that you have a conversation about how they are and what life looks like for them, and what has church been for them in the past, and what are they missing about meeting together in church, and what does life look like for them on a Sunday, and go back to the sort of things that we've talked about in the past about what is church for. Church is for being loved and being purposeful and for being encouraged and being connected in, and saying, these are all the different things church is for. How are you feeling about church? And through those questions, you might then find what the issues are. And you may never talk about your program at all, but it's about a pastoral check-in to understand, rather than a what can I physically do to help you engage with what I'm doing. Now you're pulling me out of the thing. Right, okay, so look ahead so that you can, whether it's in pandemic or in the future, what can I shortcut so that I don't run into this issue? The second thing is seek it out. And that's what we began to talk about now, is that for me, seeking out where people are disconnecting before it explodes or before it gets feeling irretrievable is really helpful. So sometimes people get really, really annoyed with you, and then it comes out in this terrible email. But sometimes you see people sort of drifting away. They only come once a week, once they come every other week, and then you haven't seen them in months. And so it can feel harder to pull them back after months of disconnection than, hey, I've noticed, it's been 3 weeks and we haven't seen you. You okay? What's going on? And so checking in earlier rather than later, I find incredibly helpful. And so that's where you'll see your avoiders. And sometimes people are avoiding it, and sometimes they're struggling with mental health. And so finding that pastoral, seeking it out. And even if you take the next 3 months and seek out any angry conflict and any people who are avoiding it, in the same way that we avoid or come out angry, sometimes people do avoid or angry. And so to look at your lists and say, who are the families that are seemingly avoiding trying to engage with this stuff, and how can I seek them out and do that? So that's, your eye rollers, your avoiders, your talking behind your backers, the casual feedback that you feel is small, when they go, oh yeah, it's just not working out for us. But that's okay, it's absolutely fine, because it doesn't mean to, and we like Sunday morning on our own. To me, that's a big flag that makes me go, something's going on here, and I'd like to follow that one up. So I sort of become attuned to the little things. And then the third thing we do is to ask and understand. And I would suggest that we don't ask questions of what isn't working out about our Thursday weekly meetings. How can we make our Zoom calls better for Theo? Is a hard question to ask, because I genuinely wouldn't know how to do that, because sometimes it's the format, sometimes it's that it feels pressury. I as a parent wouldn't be very good at feeding back about that. And so when it becomes program focused, it forces the parent to problem solve, or it forces the whoever is struggling to do the problem solving for you. Where if you ask things like, I've noticed we haven't seen you in a while. What's life looking like for you? Or I heard that you really struggled with how we did this thing on Thursdays. What's that like? Or, I thought, I noticed that you haven't been around, and I just thought you might be feeling a bit disconnected. I know I am, and I find when I'm feeling disconnected, it's hard to engage with anything. And I just wanted to check on you and see, how are you feeling? How are the kids feeling? How do they connect with people best? And sort of follow that up. Or just tell me more about, I noticed you made a comment on the Sunday morning service about something, and I just would love to know more about that. Tell me more about that. And then you can validate what they're feeling, to say, yeah, if you're feeling like we aren't even considering the fact that your kid has high functioning autism, and so we're asking them to do Zooms and have social situations, and that we're not even considering them, I totally understand why you're disconnecting and why you feel not considered. That makes sense, and I'm so sorry. And so once you can really understand it, you can process it, and you're then on the same team. You're not saying, what's your problem? You're saying, let's brainstorm together to find what's at the heart of either your avoidance or what's at the heart of the anger, what's going on. And sometimes, just want to highlight, it's not always just one or the other, and so most of the times, that's my pie chart with not the center, but sometimes it's like, mostly it's a change with a little bit of misunderstanding, because I was misunderstanding what I was changing about. And you know what? I'm not sure I theologically agree with all age anyway. And so sometimes you get this little pie chart of stuff. And so once you can dig out, you can be like, oh, okay, so we need to come up with some change models. We need to clarify some truth. And we need to have, some good old-fashioned hearing each other theologically, which can sort of help you take the next step. So have that good conversation. Then make a plan for what you're going to do. Then you can say, right, well, let's sit down and talk about that. Or, yeah, that makes total sense. If it's all about the questioning, and maybe he just wants to watch for a little bit and type in and, just contribute when he wants to. And I can choose to call him out, or I can make a promise I'll never call him out. And so you can sit down and you can decide, what would make the change process go better, or what is another route for them to feel the heart of church. If they're feeling disconnected and all of the stuff that's happening isn't working for them, then maybe it's just a random person from church swinging by with a chocolate bar once a week after school on one day to say hi. Like, there are loads of ways you can do it, but you are together on the same team to figure that out. And then if you're reaching opposition, drag people in. If people really don't like it, sometimes they really want to be involved in the solution, and they feel powerless. So like when I was really bad at admin, I went to my main critic and said, I'm really struggling. And she's like, yeah, no surprise. And I'm like, could you please help me? And she's like, I would love to. And she volunteered 1 day a week to basically function as my PA and change my life and the lives of everyone around me. And she was amazing. And then also began to realize that I wasn't bad at it. Sometimes other people are bad at it, and that made me feel validated. Sometimes if you have struggles with people who are struggling to connect on a Sunday, then you can make them your key feedbackers, to say, you have a family that is complex and beautiful and unique, and I would love to know what it looks like, because I'm not in your house and I can't figure it out. So could I call you? Could you tell me what works and what doesn't work? And just, it's okay. I know it's not about me making it the perfect situation, but sometimes you'll spot things that I don't. Could you teach me? Could you be on the team that teaches me how to learn? And so sometimes they will engage, sometimes they won't, but you're saying constantly, I'm committed to understanding and supporting you. And some families will be like, I'm avoiding it and I want to be avoiding it, and that's okay. Can you just please love me in my avoidance? And you're like, I do. But then you know what's going on. You can understand it and affirm them. They're not communicating through their avoidance. And to loop in your leader, because you may need to loop in your senior leader, because at some point, make sure you care for yourself as well, because as you know, it can be emotionally, care for yourself. It can be absolutely emotionally exhausting to pour yourself into something and either get the avoidance response or get the aggressive response. And there are times, if you get the aggressive response, I think we've all, many of us, I've had hate letters, horrific emails, or communications or aggressive people. And I came up with a system where if it looked like it was feedback or if it was from a specific person, I would have someone else from my team read it first and then either say, yeah, you can just delete that. Or they'll read it and then they'll be like, it would be helpful to have snacks at the beginning of church. And I'd be like, oh, thank you. And then it would be filed away. So I didn't have to deal with words, because for me, words are what sticks in my brain. I could read a super encouraging letter that's this big, and if there's one sentence of criticism, then I obsess about the one sentence of criticism. And so I'm learning to manage myself in that. And so if you're finding aggression dealing with that, but also if you're finding that avoidance can make you feel disconnected, it can make you feel hopeless, it can make you feel that what you're doing isn't worth anything or isn't helping anybody. And there is a level of caring for yourself in this process, of trying to find that middle ground. And if you're reached the point where you feel like you have a handle on what's going on, I think for me, if you have a handle on what's going on and you're like, actually people are just tired. And so what I'm producing, I knew one children's leader who was saying, I'm producing this stuff every week, almost nobody is showing up. But when I talked to the parents, and she had to actually show up at people's houses and be like, hey, I was just passing by and just had a bit of our chocolate. How are you going? What's going on? Haven't seen you on Sundays. I just love seeing your face. And so I thought I'd swing by. How's it going? And what she found out was people were just tired. They were just exhausted from Zoom stuff. And so just couldn't manage that. But it was really nice to know that if they wanted to go, it was there. And so she was like, okay, I'm going to scale back what I do on a Sunday morning to what's manageable for me, because the main gift I can give them is that it's a drop-in all of a sudden now. If you want to come, I'm here and I'm producing stuff, but I'm not going to bend over backward to make it super exciting and amazing, because what they need from me right now isn't the best children's ministry stuff in the world. What they need is to know I'm here, and if they want to engage, they can, and that I care about them, I notice them, and I visit them. That's what they need. So I'm going to scale it back. So she managed caring for herself because she understood what was happening. Sometimes what's hurting us is what we assume is going on, not what we know is going on. And so try to manage and care for yourself in this process, because that's a real thing. Some of us are burning out and frying. And we need to be able to walk this journey of understanding, are people not liking it because are they avoiding it? Are they just tired? What is going on? So that we can do this process well and care for them and ourselves in the mix. That's all I wanted to teach about, but I'd love to hear from you. What are your experiences? What are you feeling? What's going on? What circumstances are you in? What questions do you have? How can I be with you in this season and help you cope and find next steps if you're feeling like people don't like what you are doing. And so I'm just going to check for Anna to see she's going to sort of feed back to me. And then we're going to pray after we talk about this stuff. We're going to pray, because I really want to pray over you, because it can be heartbreaking and it can be so hard to know what's right and to feel secure. I don't know about you, but I do a lot of videos and I do a lot of Zoom, and when you don't have that feedback, when you can't see the fruit of your labor, when you cannot see lives changing or impacts made, or particularly for those of us who work in children and youth ministry, when you can't see a child or young person connect with God, that's our fuel. That's why we do it. And when we're deprived of our fuel, we can be low. And so sometimes I just understand that journey with you. So we're going to pray after there's any comments or questions that would be helpful for us to talk through. So just so you can say, can you see everything? I'm just going to pop around here. And is there anything that would be helpful for us to talk through? Comment from Heather: tiredness is huge at the moment, physically, mentally, emotionally, and I occasionally struggle not to say back, me too. I would suggest you say me too. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be tired. And I think that is okay. I think we have to realize that that we are in a different situation. I think that's what families are going on the journey of, is going, normally going to church is not a problem, or normally organizing, getting to a phone call is not a problem, but for some reason, it just is harder now. And I think it is harder for us too, and it's okay to be like, I'm tired, so I can only produce this kind of thing, or this is what is sustainable for us to engage with. And I think it's really helpful. Number 5 is care for yourself well. And I think that care for yourself is so important, because we're not going to be able to help anybody if we fry, if we're too lonely to process, and if we are shaped that way. And so for me, what I've begun to look at is what gives me that fuel, what gives me that joy. And if it's being with people, if it's helping kids meet with God, then schedule the program that you deliver to also make sure it's feeding you. So if it's praying with kids and you're in a whatever tier we're in now, so if you're in a tier 2 lockdown, you can still meet with people outside, and you can swing by their house and say, I just wanted to pray for you. I haven't had a chance to pray for you. Do you mind if I pray for you? Just pray over a kid, or do one-on-one chats over Zoom and pray for them over there. And whatever feeds your soul and makes you feel like you are doing what God has asked you to do, program that in. And it's okay to prune. I think this season is all about pruning. And I think for the past 6 months, we've been trying to scaffold everybody. This is what you need, this is what you may need, this is what you might need, this is your third redundancy for this. And now I think we're at the season where we can begin to say, all right, I don't think we need this, and I don't think this is working, and I think this is killing me, and I think this is a season, I think this is a trim down time to really become what is useful. Ruth says, I think big for me this season, and totally against my normal nature, has been the realization at the moment that good enough is good enough. I can't meet the needs of everyone in the way they would like. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's what we feel we sometimes feel we need, is we have so many families, and we have to give each family exactly what they need, and we can't ever centrally provide for all of those things. And so when we go on this kind of journey of going, actually, this family needs this, or a different family wants that, and this family's kid is falling through the cracks, sometimes it's saying, I know, and it sucks, and in this season, there's no way I can make that happen, and that is horrible. And how can I make you not feel alone in that? Because good enough is good enough for what we can do, and we can't do that. And the families are changing so much that even if you manage to respond to every parent's needs, their needs are going to change tomorrow, and we just can't. And so what we can do is create structures that flex and flow and invite in and we can keep in contact with those parents. And I think that's what we can do, is to keep those lines of communication open and to make sure that when there's a change that they may be able to go on, that we do it well. But that this sense of, it's not the way I want it to be ideally, but it does the job. I think for me, it does the job has been the phrase that I use, because good enough in my head, I don't know, triggers something about how like it's good enough, but it's not good enough. And I don't know, that phrase makes me feel weird, so I just come up with a different phrase, which is, it does the job. It does the job. It's not pretty. It doesn't have bells and whistles on it, but it does the job. Is it effective is my main question. If it's effective, great. It doesn't have to look glorious. It just has to do the job. So come up with whatever phrase you need to assure yourself of what it is. Right. I'm finding it hard to rally the team. Yeah, their roles, all of our roles, are different at the moment. But it's so easy for people to just hide or opt out, and I can often feel like a loner. I'm blessed with a few wonderful volunteers, but it's not been an easy time to lead and equip and even just check in with them. Yeah, I think the hiding thing is really essential, and having leaders, they're all on their journeys, and so it can feel like they're scattering. And I can't remember, is next month, were we planning on doing training leaders in this pandemic? I feel like we were talking about it. I think we might be doing something on particularly how we invest in leaders in this in-between. And so we'll do a whole hour on that. I think maybe that will be next month. But I think sometimes, particularly in leadership, the leaders that we have served with have become our, well, at least for me, they became my home group, they became my community, they became the people that I was closest to. And so when we lose the leaders that we worked with and have invested in, they're our main cheerleaders sometimes. And so I think we can particularly experience that loneliness. And I think there's something in the way that this season is functioning, that they were the leadership of the old way it was. We're now in this middle ground, and we don't know what it's going to look like in the future. And so all of our previous relationships and commitments are sort of thrown in the air. And I think for those of us who have found our belonging in those places, that can be really hard. And and I completely understand that. I just want to affirm you that can be incredibly lonely. And so I would just encourage you that it's okay. It's okay to feel that. And that doesn't mean you've lost them forever, and that doesn't mean they're not going to come back. And that could just be that you pull the 3 or 4 that you stay connected to, the 3 or 4 that are keen, the 3 or 4 who really hold the heart for the children, and you invest in those. I think there is something, I always had in my ministry, I used to call them 3 wise women, but then I started adding other people to it because I started at a church where I had 3 wise women, and they were for me, and they loved children and young people, but they were for me. And so through every season, they dreamt with me, and they let me talk at them about ideas, and they tore apart ideas that I was like, how about we do this? And they're like, I'm not sure that's going to work, and this is why. And I'd be like, oh yeah. And they'd help refine my ideas, and they would be that really just in it people. And maybe that this season is less about trying to keep a hold of all of the leaders that you have had. And maybe it's about pulling the ones who do respond and finding the ones who do talk back, and the ones that do still hold that in the time of the season, and pulling them close and investing in those relationships so that you have developed a core that, whether or not they hold any weight in leadership going forward, or whether they are just a core for you to bounce off, to feed you, to tell you stories, to encourage you, to pray for you, to dream together with, this may be the season of coalescing the close ones rather than pulling the big ones. Next time we'll talk about how to create structures for wider leaders, but I would really encourage you to seek out those relationships in this season, because they are really essential. Anna says we're doing under 3s next month. Well, let us know. There's new research about under 3s coming out that I thought might be interesting to talk about. But if this whole leadership in this season might be helpful, and dealing with leaders and how we prep them for what's coming, keep a hold, then feedback now, and we'll see who wants what, and we'll come up with it. Struggling to have the expectation of having to have all the answers, because everyone is so uncertain They were looking at me for reliability, steadfastness, and consistency. And I just can't be all things to all people all of the time. I completely agree, Ian. It can feel overwhelming because also we're so steady. On a Sunday morning, we can handle, 4 people pooing, a kid punching somebody else, multiple rooms going on, and still give a notice at the front at the right time. And so we're used to looking at this like this beautiful, steady person that's going on, and we can feel just as inconsistent. One thing I found in this season is to come up with key messages so that you don't have to have the answers to everything, but you almost default back to the sort of key phrases that you say, which is like, we'll take it 1 month at a time, and no matter what, we're still family. Or yep, I'll give you an email at the beginning of the month. And so almost creating a way for you to stay steady and consistent without feeling it can be helpful. Once a month, I'll send an update. So, that will be in the update that will be coming out at the beginning of the next month. Or interesting question, I'll add that to the update. And so you can create pathways. That means you don't have to be consistent and all things to all people at all times, because that's what happens. I know when I had cancer, I created a blog so that I could just update one area, and if you wanted to know, feel free to look at the blog. But I'm not going to answer any personal questions about it because I'm tired of talking about it, and it emotionally drains me. So I just created one space for it, and you can do that with your ministry to say, there's always going to be an update, the latest thoughts up there, to take it away from you having to be the center of all consistency, and instead creating consistent structures that will serve it. Once a month thing, or 4 phrases that you always say, isn't it great that we all get to be together? We'll decide it month by month. I'll ask my senior leader something else, so that you can feel like it doesn't mean that you have to find it in yourself, but you create consistent structures around you, because you can't be all things to all people. You can just be you, and you're, you. I love you guys. I don't see anything else popping up, so what I'd like to do is pray for you, because this is tough. The other thing I'd like to encourage you, if you haven't booked onto the Forge, book onto the Forge, because the Forge, we aren't going away this year, boo, but we are doing it online, and we're going to send you packs, and we're going to do working groups, and we're still going to hear each other, and we're still praying over you and sending you words and encouragements from God. And if you're just feeling lonely in the season, if you're feeling like you want to be sharpened and shaped and to be with other people who understand, then please do book onto the Forge, because these are the times. I don't ever want you to feel lonely. I don't ever want you to feel like you have to be anyone else but you. And sometimes you just need someone who understands, and we do. So let me pray for you. God, I love you so much, and I love these people who serve you and love your children and love these parents and love these families and serve them. Some of those who are listening are on furlough. Some of those who are listening have been retired. Some of us are just still coming back and trying to hold everything together, being the only staff that's still standing. And God, I pray that no matter where we are, I pray that you would pour your blessing and your peace upon us now. God, I pray that you would sweep away all worry and fear. I pray that you would sweep away all tiredness. God, I pray that you would fill us with your love and your peace. The peace that passes all understanding. God, we are really tired. And I'm just reminded now as I pray of Elijah when he got really like, I'm done. I love that story in the Bible when he was like, I just saw lightning fall from the sky, and he did this amazing thing, and he killed all the prophets, and he fought this huge battle of God. And then Jezebel was like, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, I'm done. I want to die. And I feel like some of us have hit that I'm done, I want to die phase of ministry. We've poured ourselves out. We've done something huge, and now we're just done. And God took him into the wilderness. He ran away into the wilderness, and God fed him and gave him a nap. He just laid down. He took a nap, and God fed him. And some of us just need permission to have a nap and to let God feed you. And so I just want to encourage you in this season, God. I pray that you would give us naps. I pray that you would give us deep rest. I pray that you would take us to a place in these little 5-minute moments and 10-minute moments, that you would give us half days and days off that would be so restful. I pray that you would feed us, not just food, but encouragement and positive feedback and fruit of what you're doing. God, that you would feed our souls and feed our hearts and feed our minds, that you would renew us. And at the end of that story of Elijah, God himself came and walked before Elijah and spoke with him. And so God, as you take us away and give us rest and feed our souls, I pray that you would also reveal yourselves to us, that we may see you and know you and hear you and feel you so close. Because we are not on our own out here doing ministry. We are a small part of your great plans. And so God, we just put down any ownership that we have over what we're doing, anything that we're trying to make happen on our own. And God, I pray that you would pick up the ministry and you would pick up what we are doing, that you would touch what you want to continue, that we may follow you in what you are doing and not try to just make it up on our own effort and effort. God, that surround us with your partnership, that we may feel every step that we are doing what you're calling us to do and put down what you're taking out of our hands. In Jesus' name, amen. I love you guys. Email us if you need help or encouragement or companionship or love, because we are with you. We love you, and you can do this.